Thank you. That concludes general questions. The next item of business is First Minister's questions. Question number 1, I call Russell Finlay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The SNP government previously told the public that it would cost £100 million to build the new HMP Glasgow. Yesterday, however, the SNP Justice Secretary dropped a bombshell on Scotland's taxpayers. She admitted that it would now cost £998,400,000. That's just shy of £1 billion. And I'd place a bet with John Swinney right now that that will only go even higher. So does a £1 billion Berlini really represent good value for Scotland's taxpayers?
First Minister.
So it's essential that we replace HMP Berlini, and we have got numerous reports from His Majesty's Inspector of Prisons encouraging us to do so, and Parliament has obviously pressed us to undertake this project, and we recognise it has to be done. Now, of course, the full rigour of cost analysis has been applied to this project. The project is different to the original project that led to the estimate that Mr Finlay has set out today, and I can assure him that the Government will monitor and control the costs carefully as the project takes its course.
Russell Finlay.
I think the First Minister's undertaking is causing some anxiety with taxpayers, because it's them who are paying the price for this SNP incompetence, and also for their perverse priorities. Because instead of building a high-security prison to lock up rapists and murderers, John Swinney thinks he's building either a luxury resort or a nature reserve.
Let's hear Mr Finlay.
The Justice Secretary says it will be based around small communities living together and supporting each other. There will be an orchard of fruit trees. There will be beautiful landscape gardens, planting beds, polytunnels, amphitheatre-like steps. I'm not making this up, there will be wee boxes for owls and bats to live in, and special bricks for the birds. And the SNP expect hard-working Scottish taxpayers to pay for their nonsense. Surely we need some common sense by building a prison at minimum cost to taxpayers, not maximum benefit to prisoners.
First Minister.
I think the tone of Mr Finlay's question is absolutely reprehensible and despicable.
Thank you.
And if he wants to have a dividing line in politics on this type of stuff, then I'll happily be on the other side of the argument from Russell Finlay and all of the cohorts that he's courting in his question today. I want to make sure that there is a replacement prison so that those who are sentenced to prison can be held safely and securely, and that staff are safe and secure in undertaking their responsibilities. That is my duty as First Minister, and that is what the Government will concentrate on delivering.
Russell Finlay.
The cohort that I'm talking to are hard-working Scots, and it's taxpayers who want every single pound to be spent on the best possible schools and hospitals, not the best possible prisons. And this is baffling to people in the real world. They expect the Government to build functional prisons at a sensible price and to be kept safe from dangerous criminals, but they're getting neither from the SNP. Because of their failure to build prisons on time and within budget, the SNP will release thousands of criminals before they've done their time. Police Scotland officers and victims groups say this will result in more crime in Scotland's streets. £1 billion and more crime. Does that really sound like a good deal to John Swinney?
First Minister.
This project is different to the one that was originally discussed about a decade ago, because in the original proposition it was based on estimates of a 700-place prison, and this will in fact be a prison that will accommodate over 1,340 prisoners, so it is almost double the size of the prison. Now, when we've looked at the comparative costs, we've looked, and Scottish Prison Service has done this, has looked at the recent report by the National Audit Office, which shows that cost per prison place has increased by up to 259% between the initial business case and the expected costs in England and Wales. The price per place has risen to between £610,000 and £840,000 in England and Wales. The price per place for His Majesty's Prison Glasgow sits in the middle of this range at £740,000. Now, Mr Finlay can say all the things that he wants, and he can play to all of the sentiments he's very visibly playing to. But as First Minister of Scotland, I will expect my ministers to take rational decisions to protect the public purse and to protect the public by ensuring that those who are sentenced to prison can be accommodated. And I will not play games with the type of rhetoric that Mr Finlay puts to Parliament today.
Yeah. Russell Finlay.
So he's protecting the public purse. The prison apparently is doubled in size, but it's 10 times the cost. That's SNP economics right there. They're squandering more on a 5-star prison than they spent in Scotland's flagship Queen Elizabeth University Hospital, and they're releasing thousands of prisoners early. But at the same time, they're building a prison with boxes for bats and bricks for birds. And this illustrates how detached the Holyrood bubble has become from the real world. And it's why so many people are disillusioned with politics. Exactly. This John Swinney government is neglecting what really matters to people. So as a matter of urgency, will he commit to cutting these outrageous costs, or will he just expect taxpayers to pipe down and pay up?
First Minister.
All of us can see what Mr Finlay is up to today. All of us can see it. It's very, very visible.
Let's hear one another.
It's very visible what Mr Finlay is up to today. He is absolutely terrified of his party being consumed by reform, as all the polls suggest, and he's playing into their hands with every bit of obnoxious rhetoric that he comes out with today.
Thank you.
So I will reassure taxpayers, as they have, well, Mr Finlay,
let's hear the First Minister.
Mr Finlay hasn't balanced a single budget in his life in the public finances. I've balanced 10 budgets in this country and delivered value for money, and I will continue to do so. I encourage Mr Finlay to go away and do his research, because I've set out to Parliament today the issues that have arisen because of significant inflation in the construction costs with which we are wrestling. Why are we wrestling with these costs? We're wrestling with these costs because of the fiscal mismanagement of the Conservatives, the Liz Truss budget, the higher interest rates that she bequeathed on us all, and Mr Finlay was right behind the mess that she created.
Question number 2, Anna Sarwar.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Today, the UK Government has announced plans to speed up the development of new nuclear power. It's obvious that this plan has the potential to bring billions of investment to communities, jumpstart growth and create high-skilled jobs, all while ending our reliance on dictators like Putin to meet our energy demands. So will John Swinney end the Scottish Government's ideological block on nuclear energy to ensure Scots can also benefit from this opportunity?
First Minister.
Very muted.
I think the best thing we can do is to power on with our plans for renewable energy development, and to make sure that Scotland can realise the extraordinary natural resources that we have, which I saw being developed at the Methil Yard yesterday in Fife, which was a collaboration between the United Kingdom Government and the Scottish Government in securing the investment from Navantia and the securing of the future of the workforce at Methil. I think we should power on with renewables, and that should be the clear policy signal from the Scottish Government.
Anna Sarwar.
Presiding Officer, it's not an either-or. The National Grid's live data at 10 o'clock this morning showed 23.9% of the electricity being consumed in Scotland was from nuclear. The transition to net zero is a chance to create decent, high-skilled jobs for the future, to drive investment into Scotland and to secure our national energy security. Just ask communities in East Lothian or North Ayrshire who have seen the benefits. But for almost 20 years, the SNP have vetoed nuclear energy projects in Scotland, leaving jobs, growth and skills to go elsewhere. But the next generation of small nuclear reactors could revolutionise our energy market. China is constructing 29 reactors and the EU has 12 at planning stage. That's a huge advantage in the global race to harness new technologies to deliver cleaner, affordable, independent energy. So why is John Swinney determined to let Scotland fall behind?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I spend a lot of my time, as I did on Tuesday, engaged with the Scottish Energy Advisory Board and with other renewable energy and other energy interests in Scotland. And one of the pleas that the Energy Advisory Board were making to me, which I acknowledge is important and which I faithfully try to deliver, is absolute policy certainty, so that investors can invest in the technologies that come forward. Now, Scotland is already, in 2023, 70% of electricity generated in Scotland was from renewable sources, and that's before we have, and that's a marked increase compared to 32% in 2013. So Mr Sarwar should be careful not to create the impression that renewable energy is not delivering formidably for Scotland, because it is. And I think investors will be really worried by the language from Mr Sarwar today, because investors tell me that they know exactly where the Scottish Government stands today. We are right behind the renewable energy revolution, and we're delivering that. And Mr Sarwar, in his pursuit of the new direction, wants to muddy the waters. He wants to add uncertainty. He wants to scare off investment from the renewable energy industry. I won't be doing that. I'll be giving a clear green light to the green energy revolution in Scotland, and I'll be proud of what Scotland can deliver.
Anna Sarwar.
Presiding Officer, I'm talking about more investment in Scotland. John Swinney has the power to unleash billions of pounds of investment and new jobs with the stroke of a pen. But instead, he is trapped in the politics of the 1970s, wanting thousands of jobs and
Let's hear Mr Sarwar.
to go. He wants thousands of jobs and billions in investment to go to England and Wales rather than come to Scotland, all while weakening Scotland's energy security. What kind of nationalist is he, Presiding Officer? So let me set out a new direction that a Scottish Labour government will take. We will end the ideological block to zero-carbon nuclear energy. We will kick-start economic growth and bring billions of investment into Scotland. We will deliver thousands of high-skilled, well-paid jobs for the future and boost Scotland's energy security, all while delivering on Scotland's ambitious climate change commitments. In the face of this huge opportunity, why are John Swinney and the SNP holding Scotland back?
First Minister.
I don't think that's in any way, shape or form in any way correct, because what we're doing is that Deputy First Minister and I spent an evening last night with a number of investors who are investing with the support of the Scottish National Investment Bank in the renewables energy revolution in Scotland. In my friend Mr Gibson's constituency in North Ayrshire, we have just secured significant investment. Mr Sarwar mentioned North Ayrshire. Significant investment by XLCC in cable manufacturing, which will be absolutely critical for offshore renewables, in addition to the investment we've landed at Sumitomo at NIG, which will assist in that activity as well. I would encourage Mr Sarwar to go away and look at the cost issues in relation to nuclear power, because if he thinks that the increase in costs in relation to HMP Barlinnie is one thing, his eyes will water when he sees the increase in costs in nuclear plants that are taking their course in England. So, given the question that Mr Sarwar has put to me, And given the primacy I attach to policy certainty, let me use this opportunity to make it absolutely crystal clear. The Scottish Government will continue with our support for the development of green renewables in Scotland, and we will not give the green light to nuclear power stations in Scotland.
Question number 3, Lorna Slater.
Rents across Scotland are skyrocketing. Tenants are paying the price while private landlords are lining their pockets. And whilst the upcoming housing bill finally promises permanent rent controls to fix this system, these won't come into force until 2027. Right now, tenants are protected by temporary controls introduced whilst the Greens were in government. But these protections are set to expire in just 2 months, exposing tenants to extortionate rent increases. And despite having the powers to extend these protections, the Scottish Government has pledged not to. First Minister, will you do the right thing to protect tenants and ensure these temporary protections are extended until permanent rent controls are in place?
Always through the Chair. First Minister.
Presiding Officer, obviously I understand the significance of the point that Lorna Slater puts to me, and the temporary changes to rent adjudication come to an end on the 31st of March, and the arrangements will revert back to the existing legal requirements, which are based on market rent. Now, I'm aware of the concerns that have been raised. We know that there is a longer-term approach required on rental policy, which is why the Government is bringing forward the Housing Scotland Act to support the introduction of longer-term rent controls where this is needed and justifiable. And the Government will focus on making sure we get that legislation correct and bring that through Parliament.
Lorna Slater.
First Minister, the cost of living crisis for tenants hasn't gone away. Over the last 10 years, monthly rent for a 2-bedroom flat in Edinburgh has more than doubled. Some tenants are already reporting spending more than 70% of their income on rent. We agree the need for permanent rent controls in the housing bill. But this Government's decision to scrap vital bridging rent controls will give landlords free rein to hike rents for 2 years. It is absolutely no surprise that the Association of Landlords has called it, to quote, a very welcome announcement. What does the First Minister have to say to renters who will be facing this cliff edge in just a few weeks' time?
First Minister.
So what I would say is that most private tenants still have a right to seek a review of a rent increase if they consider it too high. And I would, of course, encourage tenants who are concerned about a rent increase to apply for a review. Now, in relation to other messages that I would share with tenants, I would indicate that the Government is investing over £90 million in discretionary housing payments, which is an increase of £6 million on 23-24, which of course has been facilitated by the support, the welcome support, which I appreciate from the Scottish Green Party for the Government's budget. And those discretionary housing payments are obviously in place to support tenants and to assist them in managing the costs which they face. So I assure Lorna Slater of the Government's determination to make progress on the issue of rent controls. That's why we're legislating through the Housing Bill. And with the welcome support of the Scottish Green Party for the budget, we are able to put in place the support through discretionary housing payments, which will be an essential part of our commitment to tenants.
Thank you. Question number 4, Rona Mackay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister whether he will provide an update on the Scottish Government's work to keep the promise in light of the 5th anniversary of it being made.
First Minister.
I'm grateful to Rona Mackay for raising this important question on the 5th anniversary of the promise. Parliament unanimously made the promise and we all have a duty to keep it. I spoke yesterday with care-experienced young people at the University of Glasgow to hear about the challenges they've faced, but also to hear about their hopes for the future. We are making progress in delivering the promise. We have seen a 15.6% reduction in the number of children in care since 2020, over £110 million investment in whole family support, and now nobody under 18 is admitted to a Young Offenders Institute. I assure Rona Mackay and Parliament that I am absolutely committed to delivering the improvements needed, and I welcome the report from the Oversight Board, which is clear that whilst there is more to be done, the promise can be kept by 2030.
Rona Mackay.
I thank the First Minister for that answer. This is clearly a significant announcement and welcome news on the anniversary of the promise. Can I ask the First Minister what the Scottish Government hopes and expects will be achieved through the increased £6 million to the Whole Family Wellbeing Fund provided to Children's Services Planning Partnerships? And what improvements can we expect to see as a result of this funding increase from the SNP Scottish Government?
First Minister.
So, as I indicated in my earlier answer, we've already invested over £110 million through the Whole Family Wellbeing funding programme. This funding transforms how families are supported so they can get the right help at the right time for as long as they need it. This additional £6 million funding that's referred to by Rona Mackay is for Children's Services Planning Partnerships, which will be used to improve support locally in a way that best meets the needs of the families and communities and ensures Scotland can keep the promise. Examples of this work include the provision of community-based family support hubs, services to support pregnant women, holistic support for parents with mental health or substance issues, and welfare rights advice.
Thank you. Ros McCall.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Whole Family Wellbeing Fund has underspends right the way across the country, but the Oversight Board report published yesterday was clear in the explicit leadership and drive from the Scottish Government and other bodies to articulate a clear set of principles, outcomes and milestones to ensure the promise is kept by 2030 has been severely lacking. It included over 10 critical shortcomings that needed urgent attention, including workforce shortages, financial instability for care leavers, inadequate focus, fragmented services, lack of coordination, that goes on. It's simply not the case, First Minister, that this Scottish Government lacks the courageous leadership needed to make the decisive actions to meet the promise by 2030.
First Minister.
Well, let me assure Ros McCall that I have every intention of making sure that, working closely with my Minister, Natalie Dawn-Innes, that we will provide all of that necessary focus, leadership and impetus. In the programme for government that was published in September, the whole concept of whole family support was absolutely pivotal to the achievement of the government's highest priorities, which relate to the eradication of child poverty. And what I want to make sure is that the work that we undertake to improve the experience of care-experienced individuals is right at the heart of our agenda on eradicating child poverty and providing the best start in life for children and young people. So let me assure Ros McCall of the absolute determination of the Government to ensure that is the case.
Martin Whitfield.
I'm grateful, Presiding Officer. The Promise Oversight Board report also said that we are halfway between the promise and when we must keep it, but we are not halfway to delivering on the promise. One area in particular is the absence of a stable home, which the report highlights increases families' pressures and increases the likelihood that children will end up in care. There was a devastating report this week that reveals the number of children in temporary accommodation is at a record high. And we in this country are in a dire situation with regard to this. So what action is the Scottish Government going to take with respect to the numbers of children in temporary accommodation, which is a breach of the promise, but it's also a breach of children's human rights to accommodation?
First Minister.
I accept the importance of the point that Mr Whitfield puts to me, and the Government is obviously taking steps to reduce the number of children who are living in temporary accommodation. And indeed, across 20 local authority areas, in the statistics to which Mr Whitfield refers, those councils have reduced the number of children in temporary accommodation. But it's not enough. And that's why the Government has committed £768 million to invest in housing expenditure within Scotland for the forthcoming financial year. And increasingly, more of those resources have been applied to tackle void properties, for example, to make sure those properties are available for families to occupy. And in quite a number of local authority areas, that change of priority is already delivering better outcomes with families having long-term accommodation. But there is a deadly serious point at the heart of the question that Mr Whitfield puts to me, because I can only take the action that Mr Whitfield wants me to take on housing if Parliament approves the budget. And we all committed, as a Parliament, every one of us committed to the promise. And we've therefore got to take the steps to make it happen. And we can only take the steps to make it happen if we have the financial investments to do that. So I simply leave the point with Mr Whitfield to reflect on over the week-long recess that lies ahead, that maybe if he wants to turn his rhetoric into reality, he should support the Government's budget at stage 3 and make sure the investment is made in housing, because if he doesn't, it's just empty rhetoric from the Labour Party.
Question number 5, Douglas Lumsden.
To ask the First Minister what the Scottish Government's response is to the Court of Session's decision regarding the Rosebank oil field and the Jackdaw gas field.
First Minister.
President Officer, the Government is considering carefully the court rulings announced last week. Decisions on offshore oil and gas licensing and consenting are currently reserved to the United Kingdom Government. We have been consistently clear that the UK Government should approach these decisions on a rigorously evidence-led, case-by-case basis, with robust climate compatibility and energy security being key considerations.
Douglas Lumsden.
Presiding Officer, our North Sea workers are being failed by the Labour Government and are being failed by this devolved SNP Government. The decision on Rosebank and Jackdaw is a hammer blow to the North East and will mean we import more oil and gas instead of using our own resources and supporting our own workers. A poll by True North shows that nearly three-quarters of Scots back the North Sea oil and gas industry. So will the First Minister also back the industry and drop his disastrous presumption against new oil and gas production before more jobs are lost?
First Minister.
President, what I will do is I will do everything in my power to try to secure a just transition for everybody involved. We all realise that we are going to have to make a transition from dependence on fossil fuels, unless, of course, we are going to deny the climate crisis that we are facing. And I, for one, am not going to deny the climate crisis that we face. But equally, I want to do everything I can to support the transition for the workforce in the North East of Scotland, just as I would like to see us in a position to do more to support the workers at Grangemouth who have been served with redundancy notices, and I am deeply concerned by the lack of impetus that we have been able to secure, particularly in projects such as carbon and capture and storage, which would provide such opportunities for the future of Grangemouth. So what the Government will do is we will consider these judgments, we will work with the oil and gas sector to manage the transition that lies ahead, because I want to make sure we have a strong and prosperous future for those involved in oil and gas in Scotland and a strong and prosperous future for the Scottish economy.
Thank you. Fergus Ewing.
We are in a time of huge international tension and an ever-increasing risk of trade tariffs. The First Minister mentioned energy security. It is not the best way to protect energy security here and in Europe is to produce as much oil and gas as we possibly can, not least because, as the First Minister I hope will know, the Equinor plan for the development of the Rosebank field states that the carbon footprint will be half the level of the existing North Sea average, and given it will be electrification ready, that could reduce to 3 kilograms of carbon per barrel, which is 25 times less than the carbon footprint of fracked gas from the USA and Qatar. So, which is better for the environment, producing our own or helping Donald Trump?
First Minister.
Well, what I'm interested in doing is making sure that we manage the transition to net zero, because we cannot deny the climate crisis that we face. And that will be the position that I adopt and observe, because the science tells me that is the rational position for us to take forward. It will also dictate the approach I take on energy policy and encouraging the move to sustainable energy security by the investments that we make in offshore renewables, again supported by the Government's budget that passed stage 1 on Tuesday, and also facilitated by outstanding interventions such as that from SGN in methyl, where there is a pilot project to take hydrogen to be used in domestic power systems as a replacement for gas. So there is innovation that Scotland is leading the world about. I'm immensely proud of what our academic institutions and our companies are doing to take forward that agenda, and they will have the full support of the Scottish Government.
Thank you. Question number 6, Jackie Bailey.
To ask the First Minister what action the Scottish Government is taking to address the reported shortage in clinical radiologists, which is projected to rise to 263 fewer posts than needed by 2028.
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, the work of radiologists is absolutely crucial in effective delivery of a wide range of services, including cancer diagnostics and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the radiologist community across the country for the commitment they take forward on our behalf. Our investment in the radiologist workforce over the last 10 years is evidenced by an almost 25% increase in consultant radiologist numbers. We continue to invest heavily in radiology training, funding 192 specialty training places in clinical radiology, including 78 extra places we have added since 2014, based on modelling of future workforce need. Clinical radiology training programmes, which have filled at 100% in Scotland every year since 2013, enable doctors to train and enter the workforce following completion of training, which takes a minimum of 5 years.
Jackie Baillie. We know that outsourcing scans is a sticking plaster approach that's favoured by the Scottish Government, but the BMA and the Royal College of Radiologists say that there is a real need to train and recruit more radiologists if we are to have a sustainable service in the long term. Now, the First Minister knows the consequences of the lack of radiologists results in increased waiting times for cancer diagnosis and treatment. The last quarter's performance shows that the 31-day and 62-day target were both missed yet again. That's worse than the previous quarter. The First Minister has been at the heart of this government for the last 18 years. So can he explain to the people of Scotland why cancer waiting times are worse on his watch?
First Minister.
Now, I think it's turning out to be my obligation to try to put some of Jackie Baillie's comments into their proper context. We're treating more patients with cancer on time within both standards compared to the same quarter 10 years ago. 12% more within the 31-day standard and 6% more within the 62-day standard. Now, Jackie Baillie talked about the fact that the 31-day standard had been missed. The target is 95%. And the performance was 94.3%. Now, I accept that is missed. I missed it.
Let's hear the First Minister.
If anyone's remotely interested in hearing my answers, I'm happy to give them. But those levels of performance, I accept that we missed that target of 95%. But I want to reassure members of the public that the overwhelming majority of patients have been treated within the 31-day target. And it's important that Jackie Baillie doesn't come here every week and spread alarm with members of the public when our staff are doing their level best to protect the public.
Thank you. We move to general and constituency supplementaries, and I call Michelle Thompson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Yesterday, 435 workers at the Grangemouth refinery in my Falkirk East constituency were given redundancy notices, and refining will cease at the end of June. Despite statements from the Prime Minister and the leader of the Labour Party in Scotland, who promised to, and I quote, step in to save the jobs at the refinery and put hundreds of millions of pounds behind it, the UK Government has instead prioritised 8 sites, none in Scotland, for the likes of sustainable aviation fuel. I understand the need to transition, but the just in just transition has turned into a just wait for the workers, wider cluster and the community. Will the First Minister join me in condemning the UK Government for its lack of action? And will he set out what specific steps the Scottish Government is taking right now to support the workers and to ensure there remains a skills cluster to transition from?
First Minister.
I understand entirely the concerns of Michelle Thompson, who has tenaciously spoke on behalf of her constituents in Grangemouth, and I pay tribute to her for what she has contributed to this debate on their behalf. And I understand her frustration at the lack of an immediate solution, which was promised by the Labour Party at the election. Indeed, Anna Sawar stood beside me on a Scottish television debate and made this very point, and it has not been fulfilled. Now, when I last met the Prime Minister, I was clear with the Prime Minister on the need to support and retain the highly skilled workforce at Grangemouth. I am becoming increasingly impatient about the fact that there has been no decision taken to award the Acorn carbon capture and storage project to Grangemouth, which I was assured would be the case by the last Conservative government and has not been taken forward by the Labour government. So if there is an interest in trying to fulfil the commitments made by the United Kingdom government to intervene, to act in Grangemouth, I urge the UK Government, as a matter of priority, to authorise the Acorn carbon capture project and to give certainty to the workers in Grangemouth.
Craig Hoy.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The SNP's Westminster leader, Stephen Flynn, lobbied the Scottish Government on behalf of Flotation Energy, a renewables company which was awarded consent for a project. 30 days later, Stephen Flynn received a £30,000 donation from a director of that company. Now, today we find out that behind closed doors, SNP ministers had, and I quote, real concerns about the process in awarding of this contract and questioned whether the assessment had been rigorous enough. The Net Zero Secretary was given the final 217-page document at just before 2 o'clock in the morning, and she signed off on it at just after 9 o'clock in the morning. The secrecy and the lack of transparency is shocking, and something at the heart of this process stinks. Does John Swinney not realise how dodgy this looks?
On matters for which the First Minister has general responsibility.
The concerns that the Cabinet Secretary was raising were about the time taken to reach the decision-making process as a consequence of government scrutiny. And the Minister was expressing her concern that the Government had to speed up its decision-making processes in that respect. And that, of course, has happened as a consequence of the actions taken by ministers in the intervening period. Now, I'm struck by the fact that on the 23rd of April 2024, one of Mr Hoy's colleagues said that consent times are a huge issue for offshore wind farms and called on the Scottish Government to streamline the necessary regulatory and administrative processes and expedite the approval and implementation of offshore wind programmes. Now, those were the words of Douglas Lumsden MSP in the official report of the Scottish Parliament. So I suggest that the Scottish Conservatives decide whether they want to have projects delivered timorously or whether they want to get in the road, because either way, the Conservatives look like they're in their usual muddle today.
Alec Rowley.
Presiding Officer, the Land Reform Scotland Act 2016 was passed overwhelmingly by this Parliament and helped extend community right to buy for compulsory purchase of land or a building for the purpose of sustainable development. In Fife, there is a group of local residents struggling to get a ministerial decision for their Part 5 right to buy application dated the 31st of October 2023. The building they are trying to purchase is in an increasingly derelict state, and the delay is causing further harm to this 200-year-old building at the heart of North Queensferry. I can say the recent storm has made that much worse. The residents wish to restore the building to serve the local community, but are struggling to get a response from the community land team. Will the First Minister agree to look into this matter and find out why there has been no progress?
First Minister.
I'm not familiar with the case, but I understand that Shirley Sunville, as a local member, has met with Mary Goujon to discuss this question as the responsible minister. But let me take the point that Mr Rowley puts to me. I understand the community aspiration to acquire the asset and to be able to utilise it for community benefit. I also understand from my own constituents' experience that sometimes these things take longer than they should do. Indeed, I've just been wrestling with the question of things taking too long sometimes. So let me do what I can to help Mr Rowley, because I understand the significance of the point he raises today, and I will write to him with an update as a consequence of my inquiries.
Alton McGregor.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The First Minister will be aware of news this week that a fatal accident inquiry is to be held into the death of Coatbridge resident Jacqueline McMillan at Monklands Hospital in 2018. My office and I have been supporting the family, who are also my constituencies, particularly Jacqueline's sister Lynn, since this time, and I know how important this announcement is for them in their ongoing search for answers. While I know the First Minister can't comment on the specifics of the case, I wonder if you'd join me in acknowledging the difficult time the family have been through and in calling for the Crown Office and Prosecution Service to keep them fully up to date as the case progresses.
First Minister.
I welcome the point made by Mr McGregor, and he obviously acknowledges that I cannot comment on the substance of the case that, as it is currently live. But I do assure him that the Crown Office have made significant improvements to their engagement with families in recent years, reflected in their Family Liaison Charter, and I fully expect that the family involved in this tragic case will get the support that they require. And if there are any concerns about that issue, I would encourage, well, I know Mr McGregor will raise this faithfully on behalf of his constituents with the Lord Advocate.
Gossel.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. In this chamber, I have spoken time and time again about the horrors of violence and abuse in our schools. Yesterday, staff from Kirkconnell High School in my region of East Dunbartonshire went on strike over a culture of abuse and violence from pupils. Violence against pupils and school staff have gotten out of hand, and our schools are no longer safe. The shocking situation is a direct result of the SNP's weakening of Scotland's justice system and a failure to protect pupils and teachers. So when will the First Minister's government finally get the grip of this situation?
First Minister.
Everybody that goes to a school, whether they're a member of staff or a pupil, should be safe. And it's incumbent on every local authority in the country to make sure that our schools are safe. For some children, they will be the safest places they can go to because of the challenges that they face elsewhere in society. And this is a vital priority. As Pam Gossel will know, I hosted a cross-party summit on the 13th of January, which involved her colleague Sharon Dowie, to explore some of the issues about youth violence. And I will always take these questions seriously. But I do not want the impression to be created that, that our schools should be anything other than safe. And also, I don't want the impression to be created that anything other than the fact that the vast majority of young people across Scotland do not engage in violence, and that they operate and they attend safe and stable schools. If there is an issue in a particular school, let's address that. But let's not characterise every single school in the country in the fashion that Pam Gossel has done so, because it doesn't serve anybody's interests, and it certainly doesn't serve the young people of our country.
Mark Griffin.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. On the 30th of January, Commonwealth Theatre staff, supporters and the wider community were relieved when it was announced that all currently funded organisations would secure significant additional multi-year funding. That relief, though, turned to heartbreak when they were told that wasn't the case. They'd missed out on core funding, the only arts organisation who were previously funded who are now losing support due to, and I'm told, a technical issue with the support and evidence they provided being too extensive. Now, to add insult to injury, they also failed to receive any support from the newly created development stream. Creative Scotland deciding that Commonwealth Theatre is not of strategic importance, despite the fantastic new facilities, and they themselves having praised those facilities and the work done by the theatre for decades. So, can I ask the First Minister whether he agrees with Creative Scotland that Commonwealth Theatre is not of strategic importance, and will his government urgently review this devastating funding decision?
First Minister.
So, I'm well aware of this case, and I discussed it with Jamie Hepburn, the local member, in the course of this week. These decisions are taken by Creative Scotland independently of government, and that's what the law requires us to do. So Creative Scotland exercise these decisions against the criteria they've set out. I understand there is to be a meeting next week between the Chief Executive of Creative Scotland and Commonwealth Theatre to consider these issues, because I do recognise the enormous disappointment that will be experienced and appreciated in Cumbernauld. But Mr Griffin must also accept that there is not parliamentary support for the government intervening in the decision-making of Creative Scotland, because Parliament has determined that Creative Scotland should be able to take these decisions for itself. But I do hope that there is a constructive conversation that can find some way of resolving this issue, because in amongst all of the other decisions that have been taken, the content of the government's budget has given an absolutely colossal boost to culture and the arts in Scotland. It's a real improvement in the funding available, and I'm glad that that's been able to be felt across communities the length and breadth of our country.
And Emma Harper.
Thank you, President Officer. The latest figures have shown Scotland reaching a major milestone, with more than 10,000 patients across Scotland benefiting from Da Vinci robotic-assisted surgery since 2021. I was first introduced to robotic surgery, including early Da Vinci models, when I worked in the operating theatre in Los Angeles in the early 2000s. Can the First Minister advise what assessment the Scottish Government has made of the impact of surgical robots on NHS productivity, and can he say any more about the steps the Scottish Government has taken to support the delivery of robotic-assisted surgery in Scotland?
First Minister.
President Officer, this is obviously having a beneficial effect because there has been the delivery of a number of procedures through this approach. To ensure we've got robust data and to allow us to better identify how robotic-assisted surgery can be used across the National Health Service, we've commissioned Public Health Scotland to audit the experience, and that data will be vital in ensuring we can continue to scale up, drive equitable access and maximise patient benefit.
Thank you. That concludes First Minister's point of order. Stephen Kerr.
Presiding Officer, can you advise the Chamber as to whether or not you have been approached by Scottish ministers to make a statement, an urgent statement, on the developing situation at Grangemouth Refinery? Because, frankly, it's just not good enough that Scottish ministers sit in this chamber and engage in a blame game when there's serious work to be done to secure jobs and the local economy in Grangemouth.
Thank you, Mr Kerr. I can confirm that I have not been approached, but Mr Kerr will be aware that he can raise this issue with the business manager, and such matters can be addressed by the Parliamentary Bureau. That concludes First Minister's questions. The next item of business is a member's business debate in the name of Elena Whittam, and there will now be a short suspension to allow those leaving the chamber and public gallery to do so.